Mhm.
Hi, I'm Angela Pansella, and I am here with Terry and Janice Tarleton. Thanks for joining me today.
It's our pleasure. Good to be here.
So, I wanted to hear about the School of Spiritual Direction that's starting up in St. Louis this coming February of 2022. And to start off, I really wanted to hear how you two got involved with spiritual direction to start with.
Well, that's kind of a lifelong story. Um, Terry and I both grew up going to church. We actually met when we were 12 years old when he moved to my hometown in Arizona. I ended up at the same church, and then we started dating our junior year of high school. So um, we were going to church, really trying to follow the Lord, felt called to full-time, ministry somehow. And then we kind of just wandered, we went to college, got married, and then just weren't really sure how to pursue that. Of course, we were staying in church during that time, but got into our 30s, and then Terry was invited to go on staff at a pretty fast growing church. Kind of became a mega church. He was an associate pastor there, the executive pastor, and just a really great time in our lives. And then we began to feel like God was inviting us to plant a church. Didn't really want to do that, but felt a really clear call to do that. So we did it. We launched out in 2001, and actually our first service was just after 9/11. And so, excited to start serving the Lord in this way. And it's challenging. We started with like 12 people, and, half of them were our family. So it's a slow start. But we had great expectations. And so we worked really hard, tried really hard, and we kind of had these visions of it being a mega church. And when that wasn't happening, we became disappointed, tried harder, became tired, all of that. So I think about 6 or 7 years into that, I was starting to really question, is this all there is to the Christian life, the spiritual journey? There's got to be more. I'm just really tired, and I feel like God's not meeting my expectations. And I read some books and just kind of didn't really know where to go with it. We had some more things happen in our lives, and we ended up at a pastor's Sabbath retreat in 2010. And it's something our denomination puts on. And it's 10 days, all expenses paid. You've got counselors and all these people available. You tell your story. So that was when I first learned about spiritual direction. Had never heard of it. Began to hear about contemplative exercises, which have been alive in the church, for hundreds of years. They just weren't in our stream of the church. So just really began to change our lives, even in those 10 days. And it was just like, living water. So came home, really began to embrace this contemplative practices, inner healing prayer, and began to be transformed. And then in a couple of years' time, I went into spiritual direction training, and then ended up teaching in Phoenix. And that's kind of my part of the story.
Yeah, I'll add to that. So as a pastor, especially as a church planter, going into it, I thought, I was a mature Christian. I thought, of course I am. I'm a pastor, and had been on staff 8 years. The church that we were part of had grown from about 500 when I went on staff to about 2,000. So I went out really excited about Jesus building his church. So I went into it with two flaws. One, I did have expectations that I was unaware of. The second one was, those expectations led to emotions within me that I was unaware of. And that's a bad combination. And so by the time we went to this pastor's Sabbath retreat in 2010, so that was 9 years into our church plant, there were a lot of things that didn't go as I expected, but I never would have said those were expectations. I would have even phrased some of them as promises from God. In other words, Jesus is going to build his church, right? We know that's biblical. Well, that means, it's going to be a big church, right? Because he promised that. And we also had one where we had some issues in our family. You know, we raising 4 kids, not all went exactly the way we would have liked. Not all was perfect. And there was an expectation tied to that our kids would be okay, that our family wouldn't suffer, because, you know, God owes us that, right? It was an expectation. And so how that's tied to the emotional side of this is through this quote that we've heard, that expectations are premeditated resentments. Expectations are premeditated resentments. Well, if you're not dealing with your emotions, which I wasn't, because we were taught emotions, are, especially negative emotions, are liars. They'll lie to you. Stand on the truth. Well, what we now know through spiritual direction is those negative emotions tell you something's not right. It may just be that the head that knows the truths biblically doesn't line up with the heart, and the heart believes something else. And so spiritual direction really helps unpack a lot of that. Contemplative exercises help deal with that. And so in 2010, as we started to learn that, I started to learn what was going on inside of me. I started to address my emotions. I started to realize I did have resentments. And those resentments were based on those expectations, or came from those expectations that I had. The thing that's interesting with this is I realized that the expectations that I had of God, that he hadn't promised to do, are really then false theologies.
Right.
And in a way, I kind of had that Job theology. Look, I'm doing the righteous thing here. You can't punish me. Why? You don't allow negative things to happen to your beloved, you know? Right. And so all of that started to get unpacked, and I realized that I had a lot of false theologies. So through contemplative exercises, through spiritual direction, through just being open to my soul and my inner life, I got to be pretty healthy emotionally, and healthier with my theology, quite honestly. And so that's how I got to where I am. I've embraced spiritual direction and Ignatian spirituality as just a part of who I am. And because I believe so much in spiritual direction because of what it's done in my life, then I just wanted to be a part of that. And so being a spiritual director and training spiritual directors is just so key to me. So
one thing I'll add to that, one thing I'll add that we didn't touch on is that we learned that there are stages of faith. You know, Teresa of Avila wrote about them, you know, hundreds of years ago, and contemporary people have written about them in The Critical Journey. Anyway, most churches in America only take you to stage 3, which is the doing stage. So when you get tired of doing, they don't have anything else to tell you except, you know, do more. It must be your problem. So, you know, we realized through this process that there's, you know, a whole nother half life. And we've been able to move into some of that, and just, you know, life is better here.
Yeah.
Freer, lighter.
Well, we've been talking about spiritual direction, but tell me, what is spiritual direction?
Yeah, it's one of those things it's funny because we say it's kind of a misnomer, right? Because we don't really direct people spiritually. What we do is we accompany people spiritually. And I had someone ask me that question once, and on the fly I said, our job as a spiritual director is to help facilitate communication between the directee and God, and then try to stay out of the way. And I still think that works for me, this idea of, look, we want you to hear from God. We will help you learn how you best hear from God, and ask good questions and make observations. And really that's what spiritual direction is. It's not fixing people. It's not giving them answers. It's not counseling. It's not coaching. It's just helping you connect with God, because really that's the best connection you can have.
Now, my simple analogy, it's not perfect, but just, you know, we're going on a road trip, and, you know, you're in the driver's seat, you're trying to find your way. Jesus is in the passenger seat trying to guide you, saying, hey, and then as a spiritual director, once a month I get in the back seat for an hour and I'm like, are you listening to what he's saying? Hey, did you notice that sign over there in the bushes? Just helping you to notice. And I actually call it just a spiritual discipline, of intentionally stopping once a month just to pause and reflect on your life for an hour. And what's happening? What am I feeling? Where is God at work?
Yeah.
What can people expect to take the course of the School of Spiritual Direction to join the cohort that's starting in February?
Well, we meet 5 times for 2 days at a time over a 9-month period. There's a couple of books to read each time. So you'll be reading a total of 10 books. About half of those are about spiritual direction. The others are more formational. You'll be learning about the stages of faith. You'll be learning about the Enneagram, discernment, how do we make decisions? All of those types of things. You'll begin practicing spiritual direction on friends. You're receiving it. We're practicing in the class as everyone tells their story. I mean, most people haven't told their story in one sitting. I mean, that's hugely formational and healing just to do that.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, that's one of the things about Sustainable Faith's program is where maybe it differs some from other programs is that it really is formational. And if someone goes through year 1 and decides not to be a spiritual director, they still will have really grown in their own formation, their inner life and understanding how all of that's tied together. They would benefit from that.
So it's not starting until February, but people could be doing some prep work now if they're interested in joining the class. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we would like them to be in spiritual direction. If you're going to be a spiritual director, you should probably go to it. I mean, we go to a director every month. We have for years. So it's required that you go to at least 2 sessions and you'll do a report on those. And then, of course, as you get signed up, there's the books to start reading before the module.
Yeah, and so that's 2 sessions prior to the first cohort. So yeah, so there's some prep work that way. And I would add to that, start now, find a spiritual director and get going and let it be a lifelong journey for you.
Well, Terry, Janice, thank you. I will make sure that there's a link to the site where folks can read more about the program, and I can make sure that your an email address for one of you is provided there as well, so that people can contact you directly if they've got any questions.
Great.
Well,
Thank you,
Angela.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.